was a drive way back. It might be. It could be. It is. Holy cow. Welcome to another broadcast of Bricks Behind the Ivy.
Hey, Cub fans, welcome to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. I am your host, Jeff Candy Cubs Rogowskis, and thanks for joining me. I know a lot of you are probably a little bit sleepy as you listen to this podcast because it was a long week of West Coast games. Personally, as a dad, I really enjoy the West Coast games, usually, because I'm able to watch all the games after my kids go to sleep. However, it wasn't the best brand of baseball this week to really justify that extra cup of coffee in the morning, which can be very frustrating from a fan standpoint. So let's get right to it. Let's jump into the box score blitz. This is the segment in which we go over the prior week's games in a quick fashion so you can get caught up on everything that's been happening in the Cub games in the last week. So let's put some time on the clock. 3, 2, 1. Go. Cubs welcome the Mets to town. As every Cub fan knows, they did something to us in 1969. I can't quite remember. I was just a glimmer in someone's eye at that point, but
like 8 years ago, asshole. People don't forget.
Game 1 is Shota Imanaga versus old Cub Jose Quintana, who is more famous for he was traded to get him than his career was successful in Chicago. So this was not the return to Wrigley that Cub fans might have wanted from Quintana. They generated very little offensively, and there were 6.1 innings pitched, 4 hits, 8 strikeouts. Not great. Shota, unfortunately, was a batting tee. He was not Showtime, not premium television. Ask for your refunds, kids. 10 earned runs, 3 home runs. Throw this game out. It was over early. Cubs lose 11-1 to the Grimace Fire Mets. Game 2 was Tyler McGill versus Jameson Taillon, and this has been such a redemption season for Jameson Taillon after a real rough start to his Cubs tenure last year. Cubs pounce in the first for 5 runs. BCA hits an absolute electric 2-out triple to cap it off, and Taillon continues his redemption season. 7 innings pitched, 6 hits, 1 run, and 10 strikeouts with 15 whiffs. A lot of cutters in this game with Nito behind the plate. It'll be something to monitor going forward to see if this is a pitch he leans on or if that was just one that was working for him that day. Cubs finally win a comfortable game, not a one-run game. It was 8-1 the final in taking game 2. Sunday, the anniversary of the Ryne Sandberg game, the 40th anniversary. And congratulations to Ryne Sandberg on getting your statue revealed at Wrigley Field. Lots of fanfare, games on ESPN, bunch of buzz at the ballpark, but all that buzz was gone in the field. The team looked flat, his side was not very sharp, there was lots of traffic early on. 4 runs on 2 home runs, Lindor and finding Nemo's barrel as he hits a home run. Morel gets the game interesting with a 2-run bomb. Then Edwin Diaz is a very unique situation where he comes onto the field and immediately gets thrown out for a sticky stuff violation. He's now serving a 7-game suspension. He did not appeal. Cubs cannot come back in against the replacement. They lose this game on Rhino Day 5-3, and all the kids went to bed sad. But don't worry, off to San Francisco. Nothing like a night game on a Sunday to travel across the country to San Francisco for a night game immediately the day after. Justin Steele in this one, the man of steel, versus a bullpen game for the Giants. Had a few of those in this series. Justin Steele continues to look like Superman out there, earning his nickname. 7.1 in this one, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, 1 walk, 9 Ks. Looking super solid in his last few starts. Cubs score 4, but it felt like it should have been more, which actually became a problem late in this game. They left 12 men on base, 4 for 15 with runners in scoring position. Corey Brewer gets a chance to save the game in the 9th. Matt Chapman, who Sean and I really wanted for third base, but anywho, bloops a double in the center field. Estrada gets a bunt single. There's a sac fly, and then where this game's getting awfully tight, Drew Smiley comes in, and Patrick Bailey rips a single. It's now 4-3. Sac fly with 2 to make it 2 outs, 4-4. Smiley intentionally walks a batter to load the bases for the force out and cannot find the strike zone versus Wilmer Flores. Walks in the winning run. Cubs blow another save. Their 17th blown save of the season. Frustrating. Game 2, Hendricks on the mound after his recent gem, and guess what? Summer school is still a thing. 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 4 Ks, 11 whiffs. His June curveball usage is up to 20.4%, which is a career high. So he's been using the changeup less and using the curveball more. I wonder who suggested that. And Brooks behind the ivy.
I got him! Great hit! Don't get cocky!
Anywho, he gives a lot of credit to Miguel Amaya, giving him confidence to throw his curveball more. The offense, however, stayed ice cold even in warm San Francisco. Did not generate much. Cubs lose this one 5-1, even after a very good effort from Kyle Hendricks. Game 3, the Cubs are matching with a bullpen game, and this one is Hayden Wesneski, and they are facing the Giants, and this game ultimately starts pretty positive. The Cubs take a lead on a PCA RBI single, and they were winning for about 11 minutes. And somebody timed it on Twitter. It was 2-run bomb by Michael Conforto in the next inning, followed by David Villar's first home run. And Wesneski's been bit by the long ball, and the Cubs have been bit by the long ball by guys who just aren't hitting home runs. Very, very frustrating. PCA scores from first later in this game on a hit-and-run single by Amaya. Yes, scored from first. The guy's super fast. Seiya Suzuki hits a bomb, and we're tied at 3. But guess what? Immediately in the bottom of that inning, the bottom of the 5th, Luis Matos hits a slow home run, and the Giants take a lead. So the trending moment of the game, top of the 8th, 2 men on, 2 outs. Counsel calls for the double steal, but the Giants scouting and Tyler Rogers sniffed this one out. They get Ian Happ at third. Cubs fail at tying the game. They lose this game 4-3, another 1-run loss on the season. Game 4, Shota Imanaga is back on the mound after his rocking, and are we back to premium TV? Yeah, maybe not their top-end premium programming like you expect from Showtime, but still pretty solid. 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 runs, 3 earned runs, 2 walks, 3 Ks, only 8 whiffs. The bullpen, which a lot of people give flack to, was nails in this one. Tyson Miller, Luke Little, Porter Hodge, and Hector Neris, believe it or not. 4 innings pitched, 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 Ks. Cubs go up 3-0 in this one with a Nico Horner 2-run homer early in the game, only to see the Giants tied up by the 6th inning. But never fear, Ian Happ converts to our daddy. It's a 2-run tater out to center field in extra innings. Cubs take a 5-3 lead. They do not relinquish that lead. Porter Hodge gets an opportunity for his first career save, gets it even after a scary final pop-up in which him and David Bodie couldn't decide who was going to catch it. Doesn't matter. Falls in the glove. Third out. Cubs win. Losing streak is over. Road trip is over. And so is the box score blitz. So that leads us to the Fly the W standings update. Fly the W, an Etsy store of Cubs-related stickers. Check it out today, and thank you for your sponsorship. The Chicago Cubs still barely sit above last place. If we recorded this yesterday, they would have been in last place, which fit the narrative to lots of the articles that were circulating of the frustration of this year's team. Yesterday was the halfway point officially, 81 games down, and this is not where I think anyone imagined the Cubs would be sitting at 7 games yesterday under 506 today. The Milwaukee Brewers still lead the circuit at the top, 48-33. The St. Louis Cardinals have stayed above 500, 41-38. The Pirates, 39-41, right above the Cubs. The Cubs landing in at 38-44. And at this moment, even with beating the bejesus out of the Redbirds at the moment, the Cincinnati Reds are in last at 37-43. The Cubs are still only 4.5 games out of the wild card, but they are getting, some distance there as well. And losing the series to the Giants means that they've lost yet another tiebreaker to teams that are in the standings. Losing the tiebreaker in their series loss to the Mets this past weekend, if that comes into play later in the season. And considering how jumbled the stands are, it is very likely that that could become a factor. So the Cubs not only have work to do to get back in the standings, they have lost a number of tiebreakers with teams that they are actively playing against and trying to get above. So, what do we do now? Well, Sean Hot Stove Cubbies Chapin is back this week with another 15 minutes with Hot Stove Cubbies. Take it away, Sean.
Hey Cubs fans, another 15 minutes with Hot Stove Cubbies today. Going off the cuff, so we're just not doing notes. We're not doing any prepared work. This is just me talking to you as a Cubs fan. This has been a very disappointing season, to say the least. The team's finding new ways to lose, walking in, walk-off runs, and it has been incredibly difficult to watch the Cubs and go through the season that they're going through. I feel like we're at the point where March and April is more of an anomaly than what has been taking place in May, June, and probably into July. The team's not getting better. There is holes on this roster. This roster is paid out as a top 8 payroll roster, and they're not playing anywhere near it.
Oh no! We suck again!
So what do the Cubs do from here? I asked something on Twitter that what the Cubs should do if they're 3 games out or less from the wild card spot. 58% stated that they should buy controllable pieces. 31% stated that the Cubs should sell off and let the kids play. And then so those are the 2 primary things that people want to see, and I can't disagree with them. Buying controllable players is where it's at. That's something that needs to take place, but I don't feel like Jed's going to do what needs to be done to get those controllable players. Players like a Vlad Guerrero, players like Mason Miller, Shea Langoliers. Those are players that are going to cost prospects to get in the door. Is Jed and Carter going to give up those valuable prospects where he prizes his farm system to bring more talent to the roster this year and beyond, the Major League roster? I'm not convinced. I'm also not convinced that this team is built to sell off. Ian Happ has a no-trade clause. Seiya Suzuki has a no-trade clause. Bellinger's contract brings down his value tremendously via trade. Dansby Swanson has a negative trade value when you compare his contract. They're not trading Christopher Morel. Maybe you see a Nico Horner. That is a thought via trade, because you have players like a Michael Bush, Matt Shaw, and Christopher Morel that could, fill in at that second base position. But again, he's played so far down to his talent level this year, you're not going to get a lot in return. This team's not built to sell off. And are you going to sell one of your prized possession and Shota Imanaga or Justin Steele? I just can't see it. I really cannot see that taking place. So what are the Cubs going to do at the deadline? The worst thing imaginable, in my opinion, is that they simply stand pat, do the status quo, and hopefully this team turns back to March and April, which I just don't see happening. It's frustrating when you're not seeing the writing on the wall of what the Cubs are going to do, or what Jed and Carter are going to do. A few weeks ago, Jed didn't even mention selling, and probably rightfully so, because I think we're getting to the point where Jed and Carter might not be making the decisions if the Cubs don't absolutely turn it around this year and make the playoffs. I think we're on that hot seat, that Jed and Carter hot seat. So it's just been frustrating. I want to see this roster improve. This roster is being paid way more than what they are producing. It needs to change. Something needs to change with this Cubs team. And if that's moving people around, if that's bringing up some of the kids to see what they can do, that needs to take place. But just waiting for this team to break out in all three phases of the game is something that it's not working, and it hasn't been working since May. So the Cubs just need to do better. The front office needs to do better. I'm disgruntled. You're disgruntled. And the only thing that we can hope for is Jed and Carter going against their own grain, going against what they typically do, and improve this roster. Whether it's this year or next year or both and beyond, something needs to be done, because us Cubs fans, we're just tired of it. This has been another 15 minutes with Hot Stove Cubbies. Back to you, Jeff.
Sean highlighted a very difficult reality of the 2024 Chicago Cubs, and that is the options are sparse, and this team wasn't really designed to sell off at the trade deadline. We were sold and told, and they're financially designed to be competing for the NL Central, which many pundits saw as being very weak, and maybe this front office overplayed its hand, thinking that this division was weak and only needed to address certain parts of the team. Now, things that have gone wrong for the Cubs, as this episode is going to end up being called Glass Half Empty, a part 2 of last week's episode. Injuries. The Cubs started this year expecting to have Julian Merriweather and Adbert Alzolay as the probably penciled in 8th and 9th inning guys, depending on matchup, and that just did not work out. Merriweather obviously got injured very, very quickly and has yet to return to the Cubs bullpen, and we can wonder, based on some of the look of his pitches and the velocity, how healthy Adbert Alzolay really was before being evaluated for an arm strain issue that he is also still not pitching in this bullpen. So given how important those guys were, especially Merriweather, last year, it was fair to assume that those guys would be just as productive for this team this year. Now, I think the counter is baseball and things can happen, and that's fair, but I think we could look at those two players and think that there was a higher likelihood of injury happening with them given both of their injury history, on Merriweather having pitched more innings than he had in prior seasons last season. So it felt like there was probably a potential for that Murphy's Law for both of those players, but that is also a very pessimistic view of their production. The Cubs also started the season with Justin Steele getting injured in his first start down in Texas, and Jamison Tyone being slow to be ready based on being slowed down by a back issue to start the season, so the Cubs were down 2 starters. The good news is Jordan Wicks stepped up there, but the output we got from Kyle Hendricks early in the season just was not at all useful. So the Cubs looked for other options and brought up a younger arm in Ben Brown to try to alleviate some of the issues. And I think it would be fair to say, based on what we had been reading and the discussions this offseason, that Ben Brown was going to influence the Major League club at some point in 2024. I don't think they anticipated him to A, start, or B, influence the club as early as he had to do. He's put up some really solid numbers, and it hasn't been the issue, but him now being hurt is yet another option of Major League ready arms for this bullpen that's no longer available based on injury. This week, we also found out that Javier Assad is now going on the IL, and he's been a big part of keeping this rotation afloat. Kyle Hendricks coming back to being Kyle Hendricks since a little stint in the bullpen and now 2 straight starts of, some pretty positive results is a huge get for this team, considering the outcry less than a month ago for him to be DFA'd, and thoughts even by myself that the Cubs were delaying until he reached his 10-year service date, which was this past week, to potentially cut ties with him and have a softer landing if it wasn't the intent to trade him given the results. But the good news is he's still here, which can put some eggs in the wait-and-see basket with this roster. Injuries on the offensive side also, I think, has derailed this team offensively and has created a situation in which the entire team with runners in scoring position looks like they're pressing. And it looks like that their confidence is shaken to the point that they don't know what to do in certain situations. Should they take a pitch? Should they swing at the first pitch? There just seems to be a lot of in between, which is why we're probably seeing a lot of strikeouts on pitches that seem pretty much to us on TV watching it right down the middle. Now, I'm never going to judge a player for striking out on major league pitching because I have no ability to hit major league pitching, but I will say that if you really take a step back and look at this offense, Cody Bellinger had a rib injury in May, and he was taken out of this lineup, which is a big part. Seiya Suzuki irritated his other oblique in May, and he was taken out of this lineup for a stretch. And there was a stretch where both Suzuki and Bellinger were not in the lineup, causing guys like Ian Happ to potentially just play differently, as he probably felt the pressure, being a veteran on this team, to produce offensively in that moment. And we saw the numbers and how difficult it looked for a stretch for him. And you could see that pressing. But when part of your lineup at that point, because of health reasons, is Miles Mastrobuoni and Nick Madrigal, as in that time, Dansby Swanson finally sat on the injured list for a knee issue, what else were the Cubs going to do? They are leaning on a rookie first baseman, Michael Busch, who has been the Cubs' most productive hitter by advanced metrics this season, who was in the middle of a league adjustment of striking out a ton and his contact quality dropping with no walks. So when all those guys came back, some of them came back after rehab stints, others did not. Seiya Suzuki took a rehab stint, Cody Bellinger did not, Dansby Swanson did not, just the nature of the type of players they are. So you have to give those guys probably a little bit of a period to readjust to major league pitching, which, yes, they are professional baseball players, but when you're not feeling healthy, getting those swings and stuff back together in an actual game atmosphere can't be great. And given the type of injury that Cody Bellinger had, the broken rib issue, and how quickly he was playing afterwards, we can wonder if he's still pretty banged up or it's still bothering him in some capacity that is affecting the way he swings, or he has tried to switch his approach to be more aggressive since he's come back, knowing that the team has struggled offensively without him. So what does this mean? The Chicago Cubs should not have blown as many saves as they have this year. That is a given. If they have half of those things, we're talking about a completely different season. And that really looks like it's a failure of bullpen construction, which I, in one hand, can agree with, and sometimes, on the other hand, for all the reasons I just said, the Cubs have been dealt a very unique deck of cards. But it does bring in the question, not trying different options based on 40-man slots when there are guys like Hunter Biggie and Michael Arias and some of the guys that we have seen now, Porter Hodge, sitting at AAA with explosive stuff. Ethan Roberts having come back recently from injury as well, looking pretty solid AAA. It feels like it should be one of those times to give these guys a chance. But we don't know the intimate details of how the workload is being monitored, given the injuries for Hunter Biggie and Ethan Roberts, and really knowing how ready they think they are to jump in and be required to be very large parts of this bullpen that has been in flux. So that leaves Craig Counsell with the pieces he has, trying to put together games and get 27 outs. And I do also want to mention that Hayden Wesneski, as much as the home run ball has bit him of late, has been asked to wear a lot of different hats this year. And I can't imagine it has been super easy to be sent down to AAA, to be stretched out as a starter, to come back up, to start some games, to then to be placed in the bullpen as a necessity and be used sometimes as a swingman and then shifted based on his stuff in hopes that it would play up to a one-inning type of relief guy. I think trying to mess with the mechanism and preparing for those different types of roles could have affected his stuff and his confidence. once again, I really want to state that I'm not making excuses for these players. I just think that there is a better story than these guys aren't interested in winning, which I feel like is the loudest noise in the echo chamber. Last thing I want to cover in this week's reaction to 15 minutes with Hot Stove Cubbies is the financials. If the Cubs are going to continue to use the first level of the CBT as a soft cap, which they have used under Ricketts' regime, then we might need to reevaluate Jed's strategy on long-term contracts. If you're going to use that as a soft cap, then higher AAV and shorter term contracts means that those players are going to be taking up a bulk of your potential salary on a given year basis, adding some additional pressure to them to be able to provide the dollar per output product that you're looking to have. And I feel like you could miss opportunities to land very good players that could end up being very, very good values down the road. And one player I specifically look at in this instance is Bryce Harper. So ultimately, the Bryce Harper contract is starting to look pretty damn good. With Shohei Ohtani last year, with all the deferments and such, getting an AAV around $45 million, it is really interesting to look at Bryce Harper, who's around $25 million, and think that is a steal. The guy has been in the MVP conversation, has brought World Series thoughts to the team out in Philadelphia, and they have put pieces around him and have built a good team with Dave Dombrowski at the helm, and they have been right in the picture as being one of the elite teams in the National League for the last few seasons, especially since they've picked up Bryce Harper. And at the time when the Cubs were entertaining the idea of getting him, or not entertaining the idea of getting him, the concern was the longevity of the contract and the value. But if you look at the numbers, Dansby Swanson is making around $27 million this year to Bryce Harper's $25. And that has a lot to do with just the shift of the value of the shortstop and defensive shortstop in the current market as time value money from 2019 to 2024 versus the contract signed by Bryce Harper and its AAV. So as we go forward in the future and we're looking at these long-term contracts, there needs to be this thought process that a contract 5 years from now, the annual AAV the average AAV in Major League Baseball could be significantly higher, and you're starting with a much higher floor than the ceiling of the guy you're negotiating with now. And the reason I bring that up specifically is I really don't think this franchise can afford to pass on being involved very, very seriously on a player like Juan Soto. This team is still short a star. He is out there for the value of money. He's going to be commanding a very large contract and a very long contract that could be 10 years plus, which would still put him only at like 36 years old because of how young he is and how dynamic of a player he is. At the very worst, given the DH in the NL, this guy might age very, very well to just being a full-time professional hitter. And then you get to associate said player with your franchise in perpetuity, which brings revenue from jerseys, brings fans in. It brings in revenue from jerseys every year because Juan Soto is the type of player that is a top-end jersey seller. And there's no bargaining agreement. There's no revenue sharing agreement in Major League Baseball that makes you share revenue from Juan Soto jerseys at this point. That's money that would all go to the wheelbarrow of cash we've been promised as this organization has been built. And if you're going to use that first level to CBT as a cap, when you get competitive, you need to be way more careful about how you deploy your assets. Because if we are going to miss out, let's say this offseason, on a player like Matt Chapman, who would fit third base, and I'm questioning whether or not the Cubs had a plan at third base this offseason, or if they were in on Chapman, or whatever iteration of the plan that they planned on addressing third base, it just did not feel like they were prepared for Morel to be there. They were prepared, it felt, for Morel to be a part of this team. I just don't think third base defensively for Morel was the plan. It just happened to be the place they wanted to put him and try him. Otherwise, there would have been a more robust offseason plan of developing him defensively, specifically for third base. So that feels like a failure of the organization. But if you do look at the Chicago Cubs payroll, depending on the source that you want to use, in 2024, they do have a lot of dead space and unused space of money, which could be greatly affecting this team's ability to go get players that would help this team in 2024. And what do I mean by dead space? Well, I'm not saying Kyle Hendricks now, as he produces, is dead space, but he is getting, based on his last year of his contract, $16.5 million this year. And the Cubs are paying Drew Smyly about $10.5 million to be a lefty part of this pen. Now, that is kind of probably more elite reliever money or starting pitching depth money, which is originally when he had gotten the contract from the Cubs. He was part of the starting rotation with his very special reverse spin curveball, but now he's not. So that money feels like it's been misdeployed at this point. And then last year, there was the acquisition of players to kind of fill the stopgap at different positions. And they gave them these 2-year contracts that they ended up seeing very hesitant to cut, but are now paying because I don't know if they really assessed how bad these players potentially could be. And yes, maybe it's just the luck of them not working out, but considering a lot of the players I'm about to name are not part of any major league roster, nonetheless, our major league roster, it's very frustrating to think of the wasted money, especially with the Cubs very close to the first level of CBT and my concerns of them not going over. Currently, Trey Mancini and Tucker Barnhart together are making another $10.25 million on this year's team to not be here. That is just a really frustrating number. So when you're looking at just those players, Smyly, Hendricks, Trey Mancini, and Tucker Barnhart, we're talking, $30-40 million in cap space that could have been used to bring in players to help this roster right now. So there are a lot of challenges coming for the Chicago Cubs in 2024. And if the ship does not right itself as we approach maybe even the All-Star break, the phone calls need to start being made about reassessing this roster and reassessing how they build a roster going forward. And as the questions of Jed Hoyer's job security continue to mount, we need to figure out if the directive that Jed has been given to construct this team and construct this minor league team is been followed to by a T, or if he had autonomy, and whether or not he will end up being the individual who constructed this roster that's having issues, or if he is constructed under the leadership of specific types of directions and will end up just being the scapegoat as we move on to another regime for the Chicago Cubs. So, enough negative talk. Let's move on to something positive. As you know, our podcast is sponsored by Wrigleyville Sports. And today, instead of our normal ad read of what Wrigleyville Sports provides, including a coupon code for our listeners, which is still BRICKS10, I had a few guys from Wrigleyville Sports join me on the podcast to talk about their family business, how they got introduced to the Cubs, and how they got introduced to baseball in a fun little segment in which we meet the team. Take a look.
All right, Cub fans, we have a special treat today. As you know, Bricks Behind the Ivy has been sponsored by the wonderful folks over at Wrigleyville Sports. So today I am joined by Ethan and Devin to talk some Wrigleyville Sports and talk some Cubs with me. Thanks, guys, for joining the pod.
Thanks for having us.
So, first of all, I want to say again, very, very quickly, thanks so much for sponsoring the pod and, being great partners in helping me promote the podcast. It really means a lot to myself, Sean, and Pat, as we've gotten things started over at Bricks Behind the Ivy. But I kind of wanted to take some time to focus on what Wrigleyville Sports is and your Cubs story. So, one at a time. We'll start with Devin. Devin, how did you get into the Cubs, and how did you get started at Wrigleyville Sports?
Yeah, I guess, well, first of all, we love what you guys are doing on the podcast and all the fans too. So, thanks for having us. My family started the store in 1990. My grandparents and my dad, Trey, they've run the store ever since. My dad's taken it over now. We've been here for the last 34 years in the same spot, doing the same stuff. So, we love it here and been here ever since. I've been around the store since I was little, coming in to work the home games and, going to games with my dad and, working after. So I've kind of been here since I was younger, and then right after college kind of graduated and came right into it. And I've been running this store since 2021.
That's really cool. And like just being in the store and stuff, is that how you kind of got indoctrinated to being a Cub fan or a baseball fan? Like where does your passion for baseball come from?
Yeah, for sure. I obviously watched a lot of Cubs games. When I was growing up, it was the 2003 team that was, really fun to watch. So I have a lot of memories from that. And then,
probably some bad ones too.
A couple bad memories from there. But just being around the store, I've always loved being here. It's an awesome atmosphere. It's not like any other job in the world. You get, you're around the best people in sports, and everybody's always happy to be at Wrigley. So that's kind of where my love for it came. And, obviously going to the games is a great time too. So I just love being around here.
Yeah, it really is a special neighborhood. And even as it's changed over the years, it still has that aura. And it's going to be magical kind of every day, like having that world be your world. I'm a little envious, in honesty. It's such a great place to be. I really enjoy every time I get out there. Wrigley. So I've been told from the folks over at Wrigleyville Sports that Ethan is your resident Cubs expert. Ethan, where did you get your start for your love of the Cubs, and how did you get started at Wrigleyville Sports?
Yeah, my love for the Cubs really started probably around like the 07, 08 years, because I'm actually from Kansas City. So growing up, I was going to a lot of Royals games, whatever's around. However, I have a lot of family from the Chicago area and like up by South Bend. And so growing up, like some parts of my family were Cubs fans. Like I know my brother loved Sammy Sosa and that whole era. However, like when I really started watching the Cubs is when we actually drafted Jeff Samardzija from Notre Dame.
There you go.
Guys we loved watching at Notre Dame. And so I remember when he got drafted, my grandpa bought us Samardzija t-shirt jerseys.
Oh, okay.
And then since then we started going to games. Anytime we would go up to South Bend, we'd drive down to Chicago and go to a game. And then really from there it was about that 08 team with Soriano and Dempster and Aramis Ramirez just kind of taken off from there. And ever since then, didn't really look back. It was always Cubs from there.
That makes sense. Shout out to my family in South Bend as well. My in-laws are from that area. And, my introduction to Jeff Samardzija was in the old NCAA football games and just Tampin Square with Brady Quinn playing as Notre Dame and just watch that guy catch a lot of footballs. And, I guess it seems like he picked the right career, like for physical longevity. I'm sure his body feels a lot better post-baseball than it would have been getting smashed on the football field every Sunday. But I always kind of had this weird desire to see him play on Sundays with the Bears. I thought it would have been really cool.
He definitely would have gone first round.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's also from another local connection. Yeah, he was a Valparaiso University grad and gives a lot of money to that school. Not university, sorry, Valparaiso High School. So I went to Valpo, and just like Jeff Samardzija being a Cub is so big for like the Northwest Indiana area just because of his ties. So that's a really cool connection. So let's shift the conversation to the Cubs. Obviously, as fans and as people at the store, you get a feeling of, the neighborhood for home games, and you get a feeling of by watching this team that folks aren't super happy right now with things how they're going. what are your guys' thoughts on the team? Do you guys have a favorite player currently on this roster?
I would say favorite player right now on the roster would either be Swanson or Steele.
Okay.
I like when it comes to Steele, it just gives me very like John Lester vibes. I know that's been talked about. Just lefty. He might not have the fastest fastball, but he'll get that cutter in on you and break a couple bats, or just taking the fastball up top and kind of making it seem a little harder than it actually is, and just going up there kind of as being a bulldog every fifth day. Just kind of what I like. But I also like Swanson, just the professional attitude. He's there to be a hitter and make plays, and kind of like what Sandberg was talking about Sunday is even if he's slumping, he's going to make sure his defense is there.
Yeah, absolutely. He's it's fun to watch Pickett for sure. It's one reason to tune in every night, even as things are bad. Like there's going to be a Dansby play that looks routine that just isn't.
Yeah. I would say with how it's going right now, like it's not good. But I think everything's being blown up just because of like how bad it has been. And it's the saying like when things go bad, it seems like everything's just done. Like, but it's also like you can't get too high when it's high, but you can't get too low when things aren't going well. And I know you said, like earlier you brought up last year, and I think at this point, like it may be hard, but it's just about stacking wins. It doesn't matter how you win one and you win two, things can start to shift. Baseball is a huge momentum sport, and I mean, two good series flips it. Come back home 4th of July, got the Phillies, which will be extremely tough, but then you got the Angels, kind of get those good vibes going, and then All-Star break and take off from there. And we've seen in the past Cubs are a second half team, especially
I think
in 2017. I know those were the golden days, but it's just how it's been.
Yeah, I think that's that's a good point. And for folks kind of looking for a silver lining, it has felt like a weird script, like a scripted situation, and how they've lost. But yeah, there's a lot of season left, and an example I'll point to, and yes, the roster is constructed differently, and it's not a perfect example, but the Mets and like the Astros, like everybody had them as trade targets for the Cubs a month ago, and the Astros are now at 500, like right back in the AL West, and the Mets are also at 500, right back in the thick of the wild card. So things can change very, very quickly for a team, especially with this team. I think they're looking very specifically for the bats to wake up. That would take a lot of pressure off of all the situations with the pitching, these things sort out. And yeah, they just have been riddled with random injuries and such that have brought several holes to different parts of the lineup. And you can just tell, like you said, it's a momentum thing. And baseball is such a mental sport that they're pressing. They're pressing a little bit, and because it can't not feel like it feels like to us, like here we go again. So to them, it's got to feel the same way.
And they're the ones getting paid to do it, so it's probably
So before I let you go, is there anything you guys want to just kind of highlight about the store, like different special things about the store? I know you guys have very quick turnaround on custom jerseys, which is really awesome. You seem to be very great with stock on some of the newer stuff, at least I've noticed online. Just plug the store a little bit, things that are going on, and things that Cubs fans can look specifically for at Wrigleyville Sports.
Yeah, I think what we try to separate ourselves with from other stores is our customer service, our love for the fans, our customers, and really just trying to get whatever the people want most. That's what we try to get in here. So we've been doing a lot of drops with social media influencers, a lot of exclusive hats. Our jerseys are quick turnaround. If you get a pickup, we do it the same day. And whenever you call, you get a friendly face that works at the store that you can see working on game days too. So we really do it all here, and we love the fans, we love being here, and that's kind of what makes this place special.
Yeah, it's true. If you feel it when you go into the store, there's definitely an energy, and one that's attracted to me as a regular customer for a lot longer than I realized what the name of the store was. And, as a kid going to Wrigley Field, and, as an adult, with way more expendable cash, spending money that he doesn't need to spend on Cub stuff to fill the space in my basement. So I appreciate what you guys bring to the table. And once again, just thank you so much for, sponsoring the podcast. And just stay tuned, Brickheads, for different promotions with Wrigleyville Sports going forward. A new coupon code is coming, and today we have the giveaway on Instagram, so make sure to check that out and see if you can win some really cool prizes from Wrigleyville Sports. Thanks so much, guys, for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Once again, thank you so much to Wrigleyville Sports for supporting Bricks Behind the Ivy. And if you're listening to this on Friday, June 28th, there is a contest over on Instagram in which, if you follow me and you follow Wrigleyville Sports, there's some cool swag they're giving away from their store. So check that out today. Well, it wouldn't be an episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy if we didn't check in with Harry before we leave. And Harry Caray's been having a tough time of late. He's been frustrated by some of the results, so he went on vacation. But that didn't stop him from calling in and letting us know how he feels about the Cubs. This is another segment of Deep Thoughts with Harry Caray, brought to you by Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill. Take it away, Harry.
Holy cow! Hello again, everybody. This is Harry Caray. You're probably looking behind you going, where the heck is he? He's not at the Wrigley Fire Bar and Grill. No. I had to get away because of the bullpen was driving me up a wall. Oh, boy, Steve, you're at it with the cigar again. Anyway, well, here's another edition of Deep Thoughts from Harry, coming to you live from Hawaii. Boy, oh boy. First of all, I want to give a shout out. As you can see, I'm getting with the island culture, wearing the coconut bra, but right in the middle there, we got Rhino, good old number 23. Couldn't see a better gentleman. That was more fitting to have a statue put out there out on the Gallagher Way. Boy, did that sucker look good. I mean, come on. I had guys run some stats in the booth because I'm a little inebriated, and we'll get to that in a second. But I mean, this guy's a 2005 Hall of Famer, 9-time Gold Glover, 7-time Silver Slugger, 10-time All-Star, 285 career hitter with 282 dongers. I mean, for goodness sake, boy, oh boy, this guy is unbelievable. So hats off to you. They didn't, they had some Budweiser, but I figure I'm going to go a little culture. I'm going to drink some of this here Maui Brewing. Okay, here's to you. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's pretty dang good. Anyway, so hats off to Rhino. Let's take a look at the current stat of the 2024 team. First of all, kudos to you for the respect that you gave Rhino when he had the statue revealed. You guys all out there, up in the upper deck there watching it. Maybe you pick up a little momentum or something. I don't know. But, maybe it'll boost the ball club a little bit. We do have some bright spots coming here. I mean, let's first look at the rotation. You got Justin Steele. The guy's got a 1.14 ERA in his last 5 starts. That's pretty doggone good. But who would have thought the professor, Johnny Brainiac over here, would have a 1.27 ERA in his last 5 starts? This guy, maybe he's coming back. I don't know. You got Dansby and Ian, they're starting to find their bats. Morel's got 15 dongers on the year already, which is pretty doggone good, We'll see how that goes, because something's got to be a bright spot, because the reason why I am here amidst all of this loveliness is I had to get away from that bullpen. My word. I've seen turtles out here in this ocean Oh boy, turtles out here in the ocean that could probably pitch a better ball game than I've seen over there at the old ball yard. My God, are they terrible. I mean, Neris, don't get me started. And now we got 3 guys that are still hurt in Mayweather, Azalea, and you got Jordan Wicks is hurt, and Ben Brown is hurt. All these guys, it's like a mash unit over there. But hopefully we're going to right that ship. I mean, we're 10 games back. We're in last place, but you know, it's not even July yet. We're going to turn this around. So, let me reach for my beautiful cocktail right here. From all of us here in beautiful Hawaii and these coconuts, this is Harry. So long, everybody.
Personally, I avoided my whole life to see Harry Caray in a coconut bra, so if you are not watching this on YouTube, come to YouTube, check it out, subscribe, leave some comments on what you think about Harry, what you think about our thoughts about the 2024 team in the comments. We'll write you back, and check us out and continue to subscribe to Bricks Behind the Ivy on YouTube. We're over 50 subscribers, and we had our first winner in a BBTI prize pack. However, we're on our way to 100 subscribers. Once we get to 100 subscribers, we will give away to an individual who comments under our episodes each week, starting with this week's episode now, episode 22 on YouTube. Just leave a comment, question, share, but make sure you're subscribed, and just comment something about the episode. And once we get to 100 subscribers, a lucky winner will get a BBTI swag pack, which will be a mug and a t-shirt, and a free pair of my Cub tickets. What? So, if you want to go to a Cub game, 2 tickets free, and my seats on me. Subscribe to this podcast, comment under the videos, share, tell your friends. As soon as we get to 100 subscribers, someone's going to get free Cub tickets, so check that out today. So this weekend, the Cubs are starting a set versus the now growing rivalry of the Milwaukee Brewers. And Jake McKibben, friend of the pod, and I have a friendly wager in which next week podcasts, if the Cubs don't win this series, you could see a very different facial hair arrangement on my face for the recording of that episode. So stay tuned on social media, especially Twitter, as we iron out the details of that bet. And come on to YouTube next week to find out what my facial hair looks like. And maybe come on this week to find out what it looked like before. So after the Cubs do face the Brewers, they come home for a set between the Angels after 4th of July and the Phillies before. So 2 very tough series for the Cubs coming up before they potentially get some wins they can stack up, hopefully, against the Angels at Wrigleyville. So thank you so much for watching another episode or listening to another episode of Bricks Behind the Ivy. You can find us all over social media, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you need to find us. Those links are in the bio. See you next week. And as always, go Cubs.